Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Jesse here with the Public Library in the very historic James Room, bringing you another book chat. It's been 2 weeks since the last time I was here, talking to you about some cool books that I've been reading and thought you might enjoy to hear about. Last time I did the March trilogy, the graphic novels by Senator John, and those were pretty terrific. I enjoyed bringing those to you. Today, I have History Tales. I have Nathan Hale's Hazardous Tales, which are all about graphic novels, all about a wide array of history topics. Most deal with U.S. history. Some incorporate the rest of the world, but he's got 11 in total. He does the writing, the research, the illustrations, putting it all together. Um, it's pretty great what he's been able to do. And if you know anything about history, Nathan Hale, he was named after a Revolutionary War hero, also named Nathan Hale, who was a spy for the United States and was actually hung after getting captured on one of his missions by the British Army. Um, so he's got some historic content to his name, and he's written these 11 great books in a really terrific series. I read 4 of them, and that's what I'm going to briefly explain today. And my buddy Andy has this room at 3:30, so I'm going to keep it hopefully under 25 minutes today. That's my goal. So yeah, like I said, Nathan Hale has 11. He's the author, Nathan Hale. He's got 11 of his Nathan Hale's Hazardous Tales in the series. The first one is called One Dead Spy, which is about who he was named after, Nathan Hale, the American spy during the Revolutionary War. Big Bad Ironclad is the second one. It's about Civil War. It's about the Civil War and the Navy and the battle at sea, and how technology went away from sailing ships and went to ships that were powered by engines and steam, and had lots of iron on them. So much different than the wooden sailing ships that we were used to. The Donner Dinner Party is about a westward expansion, kind of like the Oregon Trail, except they divert and go to California instead of Oregon. Treaties, Trenches, Mud, and Blood is the fourth one. That's all about World War One. The Underground Abductor is the fifth one, about the Underground Railroad probably during the 1800s. Alamo All Stars, which is about the famous Last Stand at the Alamo in Texas. The Raid of No Return is one that's about Pearl Harbor, and when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, located in Hawaii. Let's see, we have Lafayette, which is a story about one of the famous people who was around during the Louisiana Purchase. We also have Major Impossible, which is about Major John Wesley Powell, and he was he was on the Union side in the Civil War, but shortly after the Civil War, he went and explored the Colorado River and went in down the Colorado, which is very, very dangerous. He went in canoes and had to take all his supplies because the area hadn't been explored yet by white settlers. And it's a really terrific one. Blades of Freedom, which is about the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. I'm sorry, Lafayette's about that's a Revolutionary War story, not Louisiana Purchase. And the last one, the one that he's written most recently, is Cold War Correspondent, which is about the Cold War between Russia and the United States. And they called it a Cold War because it was fought over a long period of time, and the war wasn't raging all this time. There weren't armies really fighting each other. It was a new type of war that went over a lot of time and over a lot of different fronts. So I'm sure that one's good. So the four that I read are Major Impossible about John Wesley Powell, Big Bad Ironclad, The Donner Dinner Party, and Treaties, Trenches, Mud, and Blood. And I'm going to briefly explain some of those. So it's terrific. I was a history major in college and have always been interested in history. I feel like Geauga County, Northeast Ohio, is a pretty rich historical area. We have Burton, which was one of the first main settlements in Ohio, which is really cool. The roots date back, early 1800s, when people were coming here and settling the land. Seabury Ford, one of Ohio's governors, lived here. So I've always been interested in history, but reading these was really cool. They were recommended to me by Lisa, and she's one of the teachers at Burton Elementary, and I really appreciate her recommending these to me so I could learn a little bit more. I haven't always been into the graphic novel format, but as I explore them, they become better and better in my opinion. I had never really given them much of a chance, but they're terrific. They help you just kind of go through the pages pretty quickly and really help you learn a lot about the subject matter. And as you can tell, he chose a lot of different historical topics. And all of these always start out the same. Nathan Hale is the narrator, the one telling the story, and he's been captured by a British officer and a hangman, and they are on the gallows, like wanting to hang him. And they say, "Do you have any last words?" And he says, "Well, yeah, I can tell you I can tell you a whole history story if you want." And the guys are like, "Oh, okay. Well, if it's any good, we'll listen to you and let you live a little longer." And so he tells them the first story about his story about Nathan Hale, and the hangman is really funny. He's always making jokes and trying to change the story and change characters into fluffy bunnies, or he gets really upset when any pets die or anything, which is strange for a hangman, someone who is in the business of killing people. So the hangman's really funny, and the British officer is also funny. The three of them are kind of like the narrators, and they'll tell a little bit of the story, and then they'll go back to these three and talk, and they'll kind of talk about the story too, and point out the funny parts and the memorable parts. So it's really great the way he has done that. And with every one of these tales, it always starts the same way. He's on the Nathan Hale's on the gallows, about to be hung, and he says, "Well, I can tell you another story," and the officer and the hangman like the stories, so they let him live a little while longer. So all of them start the same way, and they are really great. Like I said, he's the illustrator of these, and the author. So Major Impossible. John Wesley Powell, he always had the spirit of adventure in him, and as a young man he traveled all throughout the United States exploring. The Civil War began, and he enlisted to fight for the Union, and he lost most of his right arm during, I think it was the Battle of Shiloh, which was early on in the war. And he was promoted because he was such a good soldier. And then in 1869, a few years after the Civil War had ended, he embarked with the Colorado River Exploring Expedition, which included 10 men and 4 boats. And the boats were canoes, which they had to paddle themselves and held all their gear, and hopefully were going to keep them safe. So they were going to float through down the Colorado River, through the Grand Canyon, and up until this point, it hadn't really been explored by white settlers yet. So they're not going to find any outposts or any stores, or they might find some Native Americans who could be helpful. They might find some Native Americans who would be angry and would not want them there. So it's a 3 month expedition. The explorers lost their boats, supplies, nearly drowned, were in peril on multiple occasions. 10 explorers went in, but only 6 came out. Powell would come to be known as one of the most epic explorers in history. And it's a really cool story throughout. It's Powell isn't always the most well liked by his crew because Powell is so interested in getting these geological surveys done, where they have to like climb these cliffs and really go up these mountains that are really, really difficult, and they have to be really careful with these delicate instruments they have to try and record some of the elevation and really cutting edge stuff that's going on throughout. But he's really strict about trying to get all these readings in, but it takes a long time, and the other guys in the crew just want to keep going, and so it's tough. And the reason some of the people don't come out is that they get to a certain place, and some of the guys are like, "Hey, we're just going to take our chances. We're going to wander off and hopefully meet civilization somewhere, but we've had enough of this." So it's a really tough expedition, but they do make it through, and Powell goes on to be famous for this. And what they do is terrific with the boats and how they have to go through the rapids and the supplies that they lose, and it's such a tough thing. But it's amazing what they're able to do. Big Bad Ironclad is one that we have, that we own at the Burton Library. I got this out a few days ago and read it in just a couple of days. Most of these took me about a week, but this one really turned the pages pretty quick. It's, like I said, about the set during the Civil War. The South is seceding from the Union, and General Scott he's about to retire when the Civil War starts. So he doesn't really do any of the fighting, but he does some of the advising. And his plan is called the Anaconda Plan, and he just wants to wrap the Union around the South and kind of slowly squeeze them until they surrender. And this involves setting up a blockade around the South on the Atlantic Ocean so that no supplies can get in or out. Then they can't get new food, they can't sell their cotton to Europe, and if they can't make any money, then they can't fight the war, and they'll just have to surrender. So that's his idea, and in order to complete that and make sure no ships go in and out, they have to have a strong navy themselves. Father Neptune is the nickname given by President Lincoln to the Union leader of the Navy. Stephen Mallory is the leader of the Confederate Navy, and one of the main naval ports in the United States is in Norfolk, Virginia. And Virginia is going to secede from the Union. So right when that's going to happen, the Union people at that base set everything on fire because they can't take it anywhere else, and they don't want it to fall into the hands of the Confederacy. And the only problem with that is their biggest ship, the Merrimack, they set on fire, but it doesn't burn all the way. So the South actually get a hold of the Merrimack and make it into an ironclad. And that's the new technology that they came up with during the Civil War, ironclad ships. So in the past, they were all made with wood, and they had these big sails, and you'd have lots of ships, and you'd sail around each other, and you'd fire cannons, and whoever sank first lost. And if you were still sailing at the end of it, then you either won or you consider yourself pretty lucky. But here they decide we're going to make faster ships, and we're going to cover them with metal so that they're protected. And this created some problems, and but it also came up with some really cool new inventions. John Ericsson is a Swedish inventor, and he comes up with the ironclad for the Union called the Monitor. It's a small one, and most of it is underwater, and there's a turret on top that sits above the water where people can look out and see, and it's got some guns. It's really fast, it's small. Ericsson built it in just over 100 days, which was really amazing. And it proved to be a pretty good ship, although it would sink. But they'd make more like it. So like I said, the South got a hold of the Merrimack. They covered it in iron and renamed it the Virginia. And it was taking out all these old Union ships, all the sail ships. It sank like 3 in the first major battle, and was just wreaking lots of havoc until the Monitor showed up and helped kind of turn the tide. Both of these would eventually sink. There were problems with them, and the North and the South would try and build other ironclads, and they would. And the other cool part about this story is Will Cushing. He kind of emerges as one of the main characters in this, and he gets into some really, really cool adventures during the Civil War. He's kind of like a pirate or a spy for the Union Army. And he actually gets kicked out of the Union Army twice during the Civil War, but each time they let him back in and give him another chance. And so he's really cool, a really cool character that I learned a lot about through reading Big Bad Ironclad. Next one, Donner Dinner Party. This one starts in Illinois, Springfield, Illinois, in the 1840s. And the Reed family and the Donner family are living in Illinois, and they want to journey west. The Louisiana Purchase has happened a few decades earlier, in the early 1800s, 1803, and the population of the United States is just exploding, going really high, really fast. So they want to take advantage of all this new land that we bought from Napoleon and the French with the Louisiana Purchase, and see what this country's all about. So the Reed and the Donner Party are setting out to take the long trail west and hopefully to settle in California. And if you've ever played or heard about the Oregon Trail, it's similar to this story. Lots of people set out. Not everyone makes it. They have to travel, I think it was 7,000 miles. Yeah, here it is. No, they traveled 2,000 miles, sorry. They'd been on the road about 5 months, traveled 2,000 miles, and they had about 70 miles to go when they had reached the Sierra Nevada mountains. And that's kind of where this party gets stuck. Crossing the mountains in wagons with oxen is not an easy thing to do. And people would say, oh, there's a shortcut here, there's a shortcut there. They'd leave notes along the trail. They'd leave, watch out for aggressive Native Americans, watch out for The drinking water up ahead is no good. Your animals will get sick if you drink it. They left them. People along the trail left notes to try and make it easier for the other people, and it was really tough. People would get sick, people would die, food would get lost, animals would wander off. You'd think you could just hunt animals, but you couldn't always find them. In the Great Plains, there weren't a lot of trees, so they had to use buffalo chips, which is buffalo poop, to make fires. So if you can imagine, that didn't smell very good. Um, just a really long, hard journey. People set out expecting it to be a lot of fun and adventure, and it definitely was, but there was a lot of danger um, along with that. And where the Donner Party got stranded in the Sierra Nevada mountains, it was starting to become fall, and snow started to fall. And even in September or October in the mountains. So their party gets trapped, and they decide to camp and wait till the snow melts, and so that they can complete the rest of their journey. So they've traveled 2,000 miles. They only have 70 miles to go. How frustrating would that be? You've crossed the Great Plains. You've crossed the Great Salt Lake. You've crossed deserts. It's been really, really hard. You're almost there, and now the snow and mountains are keeping you. So they're stranded for months, pretty much the entire winter, in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And certain groups go out and say, hey, we're going to go try and find people and bring them back, and so that we can rescue you and we can bring you supplies. And that kind of works. Some of the people get lost. Some of the people get back, but then they can't even get back to them because more snow has fallen. It's just really, really tough. And the people have to resort to really extreme measures. And they actually, when it gets to the most grim, they let you know in the story. They say, hey, the next 10 pages is going to be pretty gross. So if you don't want to read it, jump ahead to this page. But if you want to know all the grisly details, the next 10 pages is full of them. But the people had to survive, and they did what they could to survive. And a lot of people did. But it was definitely a really, really difficult pioneer tale. And the last one that I read was Treaties, Trenches, Mud, and Blood, which is all about World War I. And this was the first one that I read, and I thought it was really cool. I know about World War One, but there's so much involved. 1914 to 1918, and there's all these treaties that exist, and a few countries start fighting and arguing, and pretty soon, all of Europe, a lot of Asia, Africa's involved. The United States gets involved eventually. They call it World War because the whole world is affected by it, and hundreds of thousands, I mean millions of people are involved in this and die. And when you have war on that scale, everyone's affected. The civilians, the food shortages, bombing, just soldiers being around, and yeah, it was 4 years of really, really difficult times. And this is one of the more military-minded books in the series. It was nominated for the best reality-related work for the Eisner Award in 2015. And the cool thing about this is, I thought it made it easier to understand in a lot of ways. One of the ways is he assigns an animal to each major country involved in World War. So like the British are the bulldogs. Germany are the eagles. There's lions and bears and roosters. And because the United States gets involved we're one of the last countries that fully gets involved, we get to be the bunnies. So it's great. So there's all these pages where um, there's a soldier and he's representing a whole country, and he's got a rooster head, and but it makes it easier to remember who that represents, and what their business is and what they're doing. So I can't recommend these enough. There's a few more that I have to get to, and I'm definitely going to do that. And I've even heard some of the really really great Jeopardy champions talk about the way they acquire and retain a lot of their information that they can use on the game show. And they talk about reading graphic novels and children's nonfiction. And so really I can't recommend these enough to any reader, no matter what age. They're fun, they're informative, they're well done, and and it's really really cool. So Nathan Hale's Hazardous Tales. There's 11 in all. We have some of them here at the Burton Library. If not, we can put holds on them for you. But I encourage you to go out there and check them out. And I'll be back in 2 weeks to give my last book talk. I hope you've enjoyed this one. And let me know what you think. All right, have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.